Lance, if you're listening in and we're thinking about you. We've got the other guy who normally runs away, Lance, leaving us here, going on holiday, globe trotting. He normally is. But today, it's just he and I in the studio, quite excited to catch up on what's been happening in and around the car industry. Tafadzo Nyabuta, our favorite car marketer, he who understands the trends around marketing, comes in every single Thursday, coming in from Zimbabwe. Good morning, Taf. Thank you so much for coming in. Quite exciting has been the last few weeks. Kia has been up to the most. We spoke about this actually a little bit earlier. And now they've gone and unwrapped the box. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, listeners. Yes, they have. And Kia has done something very special, I think, or something interesting from where I sit. If you look at the traditional pickup market, it's been dominated by the Japanese. I think if you think of a pickup, any pickup, the first picture that comes to mind is generally a Japanese model pickup, be it single cab or double cab. Traditionally, you found that the Japanese have been at the forefront of the pickup technology, the pickup world in terms of reliability, in terms of styling. They tended to show where the direction for pickups has to go. But this has all changed recently. I think the Ford Ranger is one that really shook up the market recently and has taken quite some bold steps in being a bigger than usual double cab pickup, presenting a very good, yes, it's an Amarok, some call it Ford engine. It's all shared, being that bi-turbo turbocharged engine, the 2-liter. So it's a small engine with big power, and you can't go away from the fact that these cars are looking very bulky and very masculine. Now the South Koreans have stepped up the game, and they've also entered in the form of the Kia. The vehicle is called the Tasman. It is launched. It is tipped to be launched next year in 2025, and we don't have too much information on it except how it looks. And I can tell you now, it looks like the love child between a Ford Ranger, an Amarok, and the new Mitsubishi Triton. Now, the design language for all these cars is very boxy, very bold, very big, larger than what you would expect. But this trend has also been followed by the Chinese. They've also been throwing waves with all their vehicles. We have the VWM coming in with quite a few models in the pickup range. We also have some other players from the Chinese market that have also been coming in quite a lot with their offerings as well. So I think a traditional pickup is no longer Japanese. It's now opening up. Kia is tipping its new offering to this market to be very futuristic and, by their words, the most Australian, and I'll explain why they say this, pickup yet, because people don't know this, but the proving ground for most double cab vehicles and pickups is actually Australia, because those guys use those vehicles quite extensively.
Yeah, and you know, out there, myself and yourself, I that is quite right, actually. Every other car is a bakkie in Australia.
Yeah, they love them down there.
As small as a Nissan NV200, is it? Those little ones. It might be a big one, but a lot of them are all pretty much bakkies.
Exactly, and those guys have some very big power requirements for their vehicles, some very big performance requirements for their vehicles, and they really push these cars to the limit. So most pickup manufacturers actually target the Australian market. If you can prove it there, it's proven everywhere. Interestingly enough, the new Kia Tasman is actually tipped for the Australian, the African, and the Middle East markets. Now think about those three markets.
Yeah.
These are high demand, very reliability, durability is very key. So I'm glad that Africa at least is on the horizon for this model. It's going to be very interesting. Let's see how it shapes up against what the local perspective is on your pickup vehicle and what it's going to offer. But I anticipate it's going to be a real competitive challenge on price.
Yeah, so in Zimbabwe, Kia is a brand that we are slowly going on. It's bringing in a lot of interesting, particularly the crossovers. We're seeing a lot of them in our market. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the market, how do you think Kia bringing in this new entry is actually going to impact the Japanese market?
Well, you know, I think you have to look at it as a whole. Yes, Kia has now seen that there is a gap, and let me explain that. You'll find that there's quite a few players coming into the double cab and pickup market. The reason being, these are very big volumes. In terms of vehicle sales, they contribute quite a high number of sales. Let's look at the local market. You find that traditionally more single cabs and double cab vehicles are bought more than any other type of vehicles, sedans, SUVs, and so forth. That's because of the work appeal. These vehicles are bought by fleet players. So think of any big parastatal, chances are they've got a massive, in fact, the sizable ones. They have a very big need for operational vehicles. Operational vehicles, in this sense, tends to go towards pickups and double cabs. The world over is the same. Operational vehicles tend to make up the bulk of vehicles that operate on the road. And yeah, I think Kia has picked quite well. They're trying to get into this numbers game and get a piece of the pie, as it were. So have the Chinese. You're finding also the South Koreans, like I said, Kia, not just Kia, Hyundai's done the same thing as well. They actually introduced a lifestyle pickup, which is yet to make its way here, but it's been announced for South Africa, which is a nice way of saying it's now into Southern Africa. So this traditional pickup game, and I think it's overdue, is now getting more interesting.
From what you can tell, and we don't know much about this pickup, but it is out there. What do you think? What are sort of the features that will set up this particular Kia from other bakkies that will also, or that should make it a preferred pick to be using, to buying your usual Toyota or Nissan or anything else?
What I like about the South Koreans and Kia is they focus on people-centric features of vehicles. That's in their traditional lineup, your sedans and your SUVs. So you find that they have quite a lot of gear inside. Safety is built in, features, comforts, build quality inside. These guys focus and do that very well. Look at the South Korean offerings, Hyundai and Kia. I think those cars are very well appointed inside and made very well. They have the technology, they have the know-how to build a car very well, inside and out. Now, what we expect to see in this double cab is going to be definitely those features you're used to seeing in their SUVs, in their sedans. So that means that it's going to be a very user-friendly vehicle, driver-centric and passenger-centric vehicle, in that you'll have access to a lot of features and comforts. So I think we're going to get a lot of value in this vehicle is what I'm kind of leaning towards.
It's 11:27. We're looking at a new entry into the bakkie territory, and that is Kia bringing in its contender into the bakkie market. We're trying to figure out this morning if this is going to be a game changer, also because it's being earmarked to have an EV as well is that correct, in the bakkie market as well?
Correct, yes, and this is another trend. We can't get away from it, eh? When people think EV or hybrid electric vehicles, they think of small hatchbacks.
Right.
But no, we now have hybrid electric SUVs.
So we're seeing bigger engines bringing in.
Exactly. And now when it comes to pickups and double cabs, these are performance-oriented vehicles. What sells these vehicles? Horsepower and Newton meters of torque. Because they have to pull trailers, they have to go up hills, they have to traverse very rocky and difficult terrain. And you find that in Kia's marketing for this vehicle, they've done a lot of that to show videos when it's pulling heavy loads, going through very difficult things. So I think that it's going to shake things up in that the very large windows, which were well known for its visibility for passengers and driver alike. It was extremely reliable and extremely durable as well, which meant that it was actually used as a race car in its vehicle class segment and won quite a lot, testament to its many different engine types and the performance output. One of the best features people liked about it was how practical and how spacious it was. And it was very, very, very successful to pushing a British-built vehicle locally.
Okay, so we did see it on our roads essentially. Can you tell us, did it have a Shona name, or you know how we've seen the Badajka, we've seen G-string? Did this one have a name?
No, but all that comes to mind was the Corti. That's all people used to call it back then.
Okay, so 0719 do you think you can guess the iconic ride we're talking about this morning? We're also live on our Facebook page. You can also hop over there and also join in the conversation. We're talking about a legendary car, according to TAF, that boasts of a timeless design. It's still turning heads today. It has a sporty grille. It has distinctive horizontal bars. It also has panoramic windows for unparalleled visibility. And also, TAF was just telling us there that it was known as Corti on the streets. Let's see if you can figure out what this iconic ride is. 0719 100 404. Do you think it could be a legendary BMW 3 Series? Or maybe it could be a Toyota Corolla? I don't know. Let's see if you can figure out what it is.
Well, another hit for me as well is that one of the vehicles that was closely associated with was a sedan version of the Peugeot 504. And looks quite similar, but modernized.
0719 10040. Let's see if you can guess this iconic ride. It's Capital 100.4 FM. Harada's happy. We're taking a look also at what else has been happening in the car industry.
FM. Harare's heartbeat.
So whilst you're trying to figure out what that iconic ride is, let's also take a look at what else has been happening in the car industry. I know this whole week, Zimbabwe, especially in terms of social media, we have been so elated seeing our story being told by other people who had come in as we saw the finale of the Grand Tour Zimbabwe.
Exactly, and this one I think has lots of people going online to see the episode when it aired on Friday. And yeah, it was quite a buzz. I think players in the tourism industry are big smiles because you can't help the fact there was free advertising for them. But this episode was very, very poignant, I think, to me, because it shows how deeply ingrained the car is to, one, I guess in this episode, the image of the country, because it was needed to traverse and go between different places in Zimbabwe, but also as a car, as a tool, and the capabilities of vehicles. Now, these gentlemen brought over some very old vehicles. In some cases, these cars were almost 30, 35 years old, and these cars were not suited for the conditions here. And these guys really tested. I think it's part of the whole appeal of the program. You know, I think people watch TV to see something go wrong, and when it goes wrong is what we expect. But when it doesn't, then it creates a nice story.
Yeah.
And for me, I think the whole appeal of this grand finale of the Grand Tour in Zimbabwe just shows how important vehicles are to us as the lay people on the ground, how the understanding and what they actually do to us on our daily lives.
Yeah.
Think about these three vehicles that were brought in, or your classic Italian-built vehicles that were not suited for what these guys were taking them through, but they still got them to the places they wanted to go, experience what they wanted to do.
So in short, for somebody who hasn't watched this, how do you think our African terrain fared as far as the car's durability as well as capabilities is concerned?
Well, the African terrain definitely tested these vehicles. The cars were not suited. These were very low cars being driven on very bumpy roads, very challenging roads. But, I mean, they made it, just in some cases. But it shows what people should think about when they're purchasing vehicles and how they're going to use it. People generally buy things without really thinking. I think it's a conversation we had last week. We talked about engine capacity. Do you need a big one versus a small engine? And what are the uses for the vehicle you have in mind?
Yeah.
So one has to really think about what they want to do with the vehicle and really shapes what to do. What brings this to light is in some parts of this series, the cars did very well. In others, they didn't do well. But they excelled in the parts where very poorly when it came down to taking a car that's not built for being off-road.
I'm just wondering, though, looking at the challenges that Jeremy, Richard, and James faced, right? Are they relatable to the everyday Zimbabwean?
Yes, they are. Problems are a common problem. Bad road conditions in town can still damage the suspension, body parts for the vehicle. It's led to, how rich and how diverse the solutions are. Sneakily, they got themselves a new exhaust, I think, for one of the cars, which is a classic. But it shows that you can have access to solutions from very cheap and makeshift to correct. And it's all available here in Zim.
Yeah.
One has to just put in the work and find and see what really suits them at the time.
I'm just wondering, so from watching this stuff, are there any car maintenance tips that we, the regular everyday Zimbabwean drivers who are not Jeremy, James, can actually take away from how we saw them taking care of their cars?
Yeah. One, don't test your car if it's not meant to do what you want it to do. Two, if you're going for, I wasn't part of the episode by any means, but we do know people who were involved in it. Maintenance is what's important.
Yeah.
And that's what got these cars to go from A to B. Maintain your car. Make sure that it's ready for the trip you want it to do, if it's in the city. Just maintain your car and make sure it's in good working order. That's the most important tip I think you get from this.
Yeah.
From this episode.
So also looking at the fact that they were driving much older cars, right? So from what you can tell, just watching that episode, and if you haven't watched it, I think it'll be great for you to watch. But how do you think older cars handle terrain compared to newer models?
I think much better. I think much better. I think cars back in the days were built much more solid. great example of that is the Range Rover Defender, the old school one. About 85%, if I'm not wrong, of those vehicles are still moving, built in the 50s, still moving. Terrible for the for the after sales and departments, because you have to keep on making parts. And you know, for new vehicle sales, people won't buy new ones if the owner's still working.
Right.
But also testament to the build quality of these vehicles. We can't hide from the fact. Look at it any way you want. Older vehicles, I believe, were made tougher than newer vehicles. It comes down to business. It comes down to new trends. Back in the days, a car had to last you 20 years. Nowadays, cars should last you 4 years. So, you know, the build quality aspect of it comes into play.
0719 do you think old cars are still relevant today, or is it us just living off a feeling of nostalgia? I want to know. 0719 having watched that particular grand finale, are you finding yourself reconsidering buying a much more newer car, thinking that actually this is the way to go? It's after saying older cars were meant to last 20 years. Now it's only really 4 years. And this is what, in terms of resale value as well?
No, not resale value, it was just longevity, reliability, and durability. That's what was key, because back in the days, cars were extremely expensive. You buy it once, you have to save it for another 20 years until you can buy another one. So the one you have had to last. And yeah, these things were made from proper steel, with no shortcuts. The suspensions were over-engineered. And you know, you have to think of it this way. Older cars, brands were still building a reputation for themselves. So if they broke down or they weren't very strong, it impacted the reputation of the brand, which meant that people wouldn't buy the cars, which meant they wouldn't grow. So they tended to over-engineer these cars so that they last longer and a bit more durable.
0719 do you think older cars are relevant today? Is that something you're thinking about? Or do you think we're feeding off the feeling of nostalgia? And as you're figuring that out, we're also taking you back into time, trying to see if you can guess which iconic car we're talking about. We did give you a big clue there and told you it was known as the Corti. And it's also a cultural icon. It also became a very beloved family car, but it was also a motorsport champion, as Tap has already said. It's very roomy and was really great for road trips and also doing your daily errands. Engine options, you could get it from a 4-cylinder all the way to a 6-cylinder. Any idea what this car is? Do you think it could be a Toyota Corolla? Could it be a Volkswagen, a Golf? Or maybe it is something else. What do you think that car is? 0719 I'll make it easier for you. It first was made in Europe, so it probably is not a Toyota. Moving right along, last week we were also talking around which engine size is better, having a bigger engine or a smaller engine, particularly if you're looking for the best performance. If you are doing highway driving, which engine is the better one? And what was fascinating from that discussion, if you're listening in, is learning that actually smaller isn't always best. In fact, Lance was highlighting to us that if it's smaller, it actually probably needs to do more. And he gave a perfect example of how I, as for like I'm short, I have little waddlers. In comparison to somebody who's taller, who has a longer stride, they are less likely going to need to do less strides than I would do, meaning they're probably working. Oh, Norman. How many times did I say your name, Norman? You're onto something there, Norman. Let's find out if the answer you've given us for our iconic car of the day is the correct one. In a minute, I'll be sharing that with you. And so, looking into which engine is better, it was very surprising to learn that it's not always the smaller engine. My Kairi, you were so close, because Steph, you did say a lot of times people confused it with a Peugeot. It did look like a Peugeot.
It did look a bit like a Peugeot.
And my Kairi says, is it a Peugeot? So I
Getting
can see
close.
why she can
She's
say
getting
that.
close.
You
She's
are
getting
so
close.
close, my Kairi. Keep thinking about this. And so as we're talking about, you know, which engine is better, last week we started learning even more about rev counts. The little engine, you probably need to exert more rev counts than you would. And you're also reminding us that you need to be watching your rev count, right, whenever you're driving. I know, and those are two different directions. I hope you're not thinking I think Chegutu and WhatsApp is the same direction. Adamu gear number 4, motor gear number 6. Motor Guchema Asinga 0 my rev counts. I can't find out something is not quite right here.
Yeah, 100%. And two things going to happen. That person's going to have a very high maintenance bill when it comes time to service the vehicle. And secondly, what they'll feel right there and then, his fuel efficiency will be not good. will be not good. And that brings a very important point: understanding your rev counter. So every car has it, automatic or manual. Most cars should have a rev counter. Now, rev counter just simply does that. It counts how many revolutions per minute your engine is doing. And the higher it is, basically just means your engine is working a lot harder to either maintain a certain speed or to produce a certain amount of power. And alternatively, the lower the rev counter is, it means your engine is not struggling or it's getting close to your minimum idle speed, which means you might actually, in the case of a manual car, it might actually cut out.
Yeah.
So you have to keep an eye on that to understand when to change gears if it's a manual vehicle, to keep your car from actually stalling, or to prevent you pushing the engine too hard, especially over a long period of time, or when doing maybe some high power demanding tasks as well.
0719-100-404. Can you figure out what is the iconic ride we are sharing with you this morning? We've highlighted it had a very sporty grille, especially in that time, ahead of its time. It also has a timeless design. In fact, a lot of people still, when they see that car, are turning heads, maybe from a feeling of nostalgia, but also because it still looks quite good. And it was also at that time a very respected family car, as well as a motorsport champion. Any idea what that car is? Mike Kylie comes in and says it's a Peugeot. Norman in Harare, I think you're onto something, Norman. Definitely not it's clearly not going to be a Toyota Corolla, right? So what do you think this one is? It's also being said to be a successful touring car champion. Share with us what you think it is on Guess the Right on Capital 100.4 FM. So, Taff, as we are also winding up the discussion from last week, which engine is better? Which would you say, when you look at the advantages and disadvantages of having a smaller engine or a bigger engine on the highway, what would the advantages be of a smaller engine on the highway?
Advantage of a smaller engine on the highway, I guess, is that fuel efficiency. If you're watching rev count and you're keeping within a very good range, will be its fuel efficiency will probably be good, but it's very subjective. Also depends on the terrain you're traveling on. If it's hilly, that small engine is not going to be very efficient. If you're carrying a heavy load or the car is fully loaded, again that might impact it, but you won't be going fast. Probably one of the big downsides. It's actually funny, now that we're having this conversation, it's harder to bring out more positives for a smaller engine on the highway. The opposite is true for a larger engine car on the highway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very, the advantages are glaring. Overtaking power is much better, so you can overtake with a bit more confidence. Maintaining higher speed for longer, again, the car's not struggling. When you need to maybe go uphill, say very high slopes, or if you have to pull heavy loads, or the car is fully loaded, again, a larger engine will do this a lot better. Small engines on the highway still have some advantages, but when you look at it, it's just a bigger engine has more advantages.
Yeah. So last week, Lance had said we'd talk about displacement as well. So that's important for us to consider. Are you able to speak to that in any way when we're looking at smaller engines? They're probably better at displacing air, right?
Displacing air, yes. Generally,
displacing less air, rather.
Yes. So basically, a smaller engine is usually associated with a smaller sized vehicle in any case. So here's the thing: when you're talking about the car's performance and power, it's really the engine's ability to beat wind resistance. So, which is why manufacturers are always fighting for aerodynamic shapes. Cars are smaller, tend to be more efficient as smaller engines because there's some wizardry that make it efficient. It's also lighter, therefore you don't need a bigger engine, which leads to fuel efficiency, but it still cuts through the air and achieves decent speeds. So it brings in a number of factors. From a technical point of view, Lance would be the man to actually explain that well.
Yeah.
But from taking these other factors I can talk into, body shape, size and so forth, how heavy it is and everything like that, you tend to find that the smaller engines are made for better efficiencies. So yeah, it's a conversation in itself and an argument at the same time, or maybe a debate point.
Yeah. And when you're looking at turbocharged, I can remember if we spoke about this last week, would they then outlast larger engines?
Ooh, now you've opened up another can of worms. The immediate answer is no. Now, let's put it this way. A turbocharger is a very fast-moving part that adds extra power to what is otherwise a smaller engine. And then this results in a small engine bring out a bigger output than what it normally produces. And the effect is better acceleration, more power in terms of pulling and so forth. But these parts are working very hard to achieve this goal. So you find that vehicles with turbos, superchargers, I think Lance talked about this a couple of weeks back as well, tend to have an extra maintenance factor to it. And just from that element alone, looking at it from that angle, means more things are looked at and opened and inspected more often, means longevity is an issue, which means that maybe durability and longevity might be an issue as well. And also the fact that they only produce it in the short term means that there's still the trade-off. These cars have to work extra hard to produce the same amount as big motored car.
Okay,
So that might not work.
so in short, what are we saying? When you're considering whether to buy a bigger size engine or a smaller engine, what should we be thinking about? Because for most of the time, especially in the context we're in now, most of us are thinking in terms of fuel efficiency.
Yep.
Is that the only consideration, big versus small?
Yeah, power requirements is important. I mean, listen, when you buy a car, you can't ignore the fact that some people use it as a family car, who use it for long trips, who use it in the city, who use it for other things as well. So this car has to be a perfect all-round, as it were. Like it or not, people will buy smaller engine cars because they want to minimize the number of times or the cost of fuel. And in some cases, maintenance, because yes, larger engines do cost more to maintain. They've got bigger, more expensive components, or in some cases, more components in the engine bay that need to be considered versus smaller cars. But what I say to people when you're considering engine is go for the middle ground. Don't go small, don't go big, look for what's in the middle. For me, as Tafadzwa, I feel that the perfect engine size for any vehicle, that's the all-rounder size, is between 1.4 liters and 1.6 liters. I think that's the perfect ground for most people.
It's Capital 100.4 FM, Harare's Hobby. We're about to find out what our highway code question is for the day, but also just tracking the conversations we've heard so far, or we've had so far as well. First question, I was just checking with you. Are you more likely to buy an older car? Do you think in 2024 it's relevant, it's still as exciting? Or most of us are hanging on just the feeling of Matakalakare, sense of nostalgia as far as that's concerned? And if you have gotten a chance to watch the Gran Tour Zimbabwe Adventure, were there any relatable moments that you found as a driver who drives every day in Zimbabwe? Do share with us on 0719 10404. We were also exploring the idea of the Kia backing hitting our African landscape, our African market. And I was checking with you as far as driving a Kia bakkie is concerned, what sort of tech features would make you consider buying this particular bakkie? And do you think Kia will be able to stand against the already existing giants in our African context as far as the traditional pickup is concerned? 0719 10404. Let us know what you think. What's our highway code question?
Yeah, so this one is going to be difficult for some, easy for others, but it's something that everyone should know. And there's a safety element to it, which is why it exists. And the question goes,
Or a distance?
distance is what you're looking for, and there's an exact measure, and we're hoping people will get it if they pass their driver's license well.
Yeah. 0719 10404. I also want to check with you, if you're somebody who is more likely to buy a pickup, what's the most important consideration for you? Is it the price? Is it the tech features? Maybe you are looking for power, or is it reliability? Sorry, which is our highway code answer for the day. But quick question, Jeff. When we are trying to buy pickups, we're looking at Kia coming into the market. What do you think, as somebody who specializes in marketing and selling cars, what should be the most important factor in deciding which pickup to buy? Is it the price? Is it the power? Is it the tech features? Is it the potential reliability that this car is going to have?
Oh, it all depends on how you plan to use the vehicle. I would say the perfect combination for everything. You want the common ground in terms of power and performance. You want the features, of course, inside what gives you the most for your bang for buck. But the most important consideration, I would say, what is the cost of after sales? When I say that, I mean, what is the cost of maintaining this vehicle and how good is that support? Nobody wants a car you cannot maintain.
All right, so in order, because obviously all of them are important and you're right. In order of importance for you, which would come first between reliability, tech features, price, and power?
Reliability.
1,
And then tech features for me.
2,
Power.
3.
And what was the last one? That will be the last one.
So we've got 5, right?
Yep.
There is reliability,
Yes.
there's power, there's tech features, there's price.
Price is also number 4 because I need
Yes,
to
sorry,
achieve
therefore,
it.
yes,
Yeah,
therefore.
so price number 4 because it needs to achieve. What I want first of all comes first,
Ah.
and then we'll start to look at price into that.
This is very interesting. You said number 1 is reliability.
Reliability is first. Yeah.
Then number 2 is tech feature.
Tech features, yes. I like creature comforts in the car.
And number 3 is power.
Power, yes, because now I need to understand it can meet up with the demands I expect of it. Then once I've achieved those first 3, we start looking at price and start looking around.
That is very fascinating. I'll tell you why. On my list, I had reliability, I had power, I had tech features, then price.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating
There
that
you go.
price is actually at the bottom and not necessarily at the top?
You need to know what you're looking for first, and then that determines what a reasonable price for what you want will be.
Is that the same thing for you as well? If you are trying to pick up a bakkie, what's the most important thing that you would look into? All right. 6702, good morning, GM. How are you? I loved old cars. I'm actually looking for a Beetle. I actually know someone who has one. It moves, loves it, but it's parked. Let me know if you're interested in this. You love a Beetle. Beetle tap.
Yeah, Vito's a good car if you like all this tinkering with it. The only reason, very good car, iconic shape and everything. I just have my questions about the cooling system with that. It is at the back of the vehicle, and yeah, that means the air has to travel a long way to cool down the engine.
Can it not be upgraded though?
It can be upgraded. So now that comes back to the person. Do they want to keep it classic, how it was made, or are they happy to modify it?
You know, that's a conversation we should have later as well. The idea of modifying iconic cars. Does that take away from the iconism, or can truly you mess around with those things so that you can still get it to function and to move? Do I really want to have a car that's still using a carburetor when I can just update the system?
Updated, 100%.
Update it, right?
100%.
And does that take away from the car being iconic?
No one opens the hood that much. Unless you go to a classic car show.
All right, so now looking to our highway code question of the day. Taf, remind us that question again.
So the question goes, how far from a corner are you forbidden to stop your car?
All right, so let me just go through some of the answers that have come in. 9401, good morning. You say it's 7.5 meters. 8538, Rachiangwa says 7 meters. Mike Kyrie, I love how you're in there. She says 7.5 meters. Alvarez, the Bantiti, he says, is 7 meters. Daniel, listening in from Cheetown, says it's 7.5 meters. Ray, listening in from the UK, I'm guessing you say you're not allowed to stop within 7.5 meters from a corner, and you say you're learning a lot about cars. Good to hear that. And then Manoa Mambo says it's 13 meters. And then Taps, a designer listening in from Chitungwiza, comes in and says 7.5 meters. And 1828 also comes in, joins the party, and says 7 meters. Taps, it sounds like we've got everything from 7 under the hood. We'll be back again next week, Thursday, with all things to do with the automotive industry, letting you know all the latest news, trends, and anything you need to know about how to better take care of your car. Tab, how do we get a hold of you?
Very simple. To inquiries@zimoco.co.zw and ask for Tafato.
And till next week, when Lance will be back, you and I will touch base again tomorrow, Friday, between 9 and 12. Until then, we're out.